The deadline is 2 weeks away. Well, even less than that. The Orioles, they need some starting pitching, and rentals generally are the cheapest way to add that. But this year, not a lot of them on the board. So I'll go through my wish list of rental starting pitchers coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Thursday, July 18th, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, I'm going to give you my wish list of my top 4 rental starting pitchers that could be on the trade market in the next 2 weeks or so. 4 guys who I think the O's could add and could help them try and win a World Series here in 2024, and then let you know about a few more undrafted free agent signings the Orioles have made after the draft. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. So it's my wish list of Orioles rental starting pitchers. Now, I've already done one wish list this trade season. It was my rental reliever wish list. I ranked my top 6 relievers. And again, when I say the word rental, that means someone who will be a free agent after this 2024 season. You call him a rental because you trade for him and you get him for essentially 2 months and then the postseason. So it feels like you're kind of renting a player before losing him to free agency once again. So remember, I'm only going to be talking about rentals, guys who can be free agents after this year, in this episode. Now, I do want to start with some caveats because there are a lot of caveats when it comes to the rental pitcher trade market here as we sit 12 days away from the deadline before I get into my top 4. And one of the reasons why it's only a top 4, you say, Connor, shouldn't there be more pitching out there? Well, there are quite literally only 12 rental starters that are even theoretically available on the market this year. And honestly, you can knock that down to 11 because Max Scherzer is one of them, but Scherzer has a full no trade clause with the Rangers. He's already stated publicly he is not going to waive that no trade clause. He wants to go for it. So we're already down to 11. Then you take the fact that the Rangers have a lot of rental pitching in general. They might not sell. This series that starts tomorrow is gigantic for the O's, not just to get back on track after losing 5 out of 6 heading into the All-Star break, but if they could find a way to sweep the Rangers on the road this weekend, they might sweep the Rangers into being a seller at the deadline. And the Rangers have a lot of talent to give away. But if the Rangers keep playing well and don't sell, and another team like the Reds, who I have on this list, doesn't sell, and there's already teams I've knocked off, like the Cardinals and the Mets both had some pitching, but they both currently sit in a wild card spot in the National League. They're not going to be sellers, I don't think, this year. So you lose a lot of potential pitching there. So you take the Rangers and Reds out potentially, you're down to 7 candidates for rental starters. One of them is Trevor Williams, who's had a good year but has been injured for a while. I don't think any team is touching him with the injury issue. And another one is Patrick Corbin, who's been a disaster for 4 years for the Nationals. Don't think anyone wants him either. Now we're down to 5. Speaking of injury, Ross Stripling of the A's. He is pitching on rehab right now and is almost back for Oakland. But do you really want someone who's been out for a couple of months to join your team? I'm not really sure. So if you're talking about healthy guys who are rental starters, there's 4 of them, to be honest. There's 4 of them. Martin Perez, Jack Flaherty, Yusei Kikuchi, and Chris Flexen. And Perez and Flexen both kind of stink. So really there's 2 of them that it could end up are worth trading for that actually become available when we get closer to the trade deadline. That should give you a sense of how tough it may be for not just the Orioles, but any team out there looking for starting pitching to add a starter, specifically a rental starter. But for this exercise, I'm going to include the guys that I kind of knocked off the list as I went down there. Besides Max Scherzer, he's not getting dealt. So of those 11 guys we started with, this is my top 4 rental starters from me personally, my wish list that I would like to see the Orioles go after. And my number 4 on this list is our old friend, Jack Flaherty. Now, as we know, the Orioles acquired Flaherty at the trade deadline last year. He was their one starting pitcher pickup, getting him from the Cardinals and sending Cesar Prieto, Drew Rom, and Zach Showalter, 3 prospects, over to St. Louis. Now, Flaherty, who was once a Cy Young contender back in 2019, went through shoulder injuries, just was clearly not the same pitcher, but was having a little bit of a bounce-back productive year in St. Louis. He was, again, a rental, and the Orioles went and got him, and they gave up 3 prospects where it didn't really hurt to give up any of those 3 guys. Flaherty came in. He had a really good first start as an Oriole in Toronto, and then it kind of all went off the rails from there. He was eventually moved to the bullpen. He was essentially the Orioles' mop-up man on the playoff roster, which is not what you're trading for at the deadline. There was some issues in the clubhouse as well between him and one of the coaches, and yeah, it wasn't great between the Orioles and Flaherty. But he signed kind of a 1-year prove-it deal with the Tigers this offseason, and he has certainly proved it, which means for me, he's at least back in this conversation. 95 innings over 16 starts this year for Flaherty. He's got a 3.13 ERA with a 3.17 FIP and a 2.50 xFIP on my list of the 12 starters that might maybe be available. He's got the best starting pitcher WAR. He's got the best xFIP. He's got one of the best ERAs. He's been fantastic this year, and you could argue, all things considered, has performed the best out of any of the rental starters out there. He is going to be a hot commodity. Now, his velocity hasn't really gone up on his fastball, but his breaking ball command is kind of back to what it was back in 2019. And all of a sudden, he's getting more whiffs than most starters and more than he's really ever gotten. 39% swing and miss rate on his slider, 44% on his curveball. Those are both great numbers. Now, a couple weeks ago, he did miss a start with a back issue, but did not go on the injured list and then returned his next time around and still looked good on the mound. Highest strikeout rate, lowest walk rate of his career. Basically, everything is lining up for him to be the perfect choice for any team, including the Orioles, if you're trying to add a rental starting pitcher. The issue is just, we just saw this happen, and we just saw it be a disaster 1 year ago. No matter how many changes Flaherty has made, that is going to sit in the back of your mind as a fan and as someone working in the Orioles front office. That's why he's all the way down at number 4. If some other team had traded for Flaherty and he had been a disaster for them down the stretch and then turned it around, Flaherty might honestly be my number 1 choice, but because it was specifically the Orioles and did not work out here, that's why he's down at number 4. I wouldn't be shocked if they traded for him again, but I would be surprised just with how it happened last season. Number 3 on my list is a guy who hasn't pitched for the Orioles, but did dominate the Orioles earlier this season. And that is Rangers left-hander Andrew Heaney, who on Sunday Night Baseball earlier this year twirled his best start of the year at Camden Yards, 7 scoreless innings with 10 strikeouts. I think Theo's got a run or 2 off him, but he did have 10 strikeouts, and he was phenomenal. Heaney this year with the Rangers has been good. 3.79 ERA in 95 innings over 18 starts for Texas. His FIP is right around there as well. He's, striking out 24% of batters, walking 6% of batters. Those are really, really solid numbers for a starting pitcher. He's a lefty, which I think would help this Orioles rotation. He's got his 4-seamer, which plays well, even though it's only at 92. It plays up in the zone. It's got some good spin rate on it. His slider is his best pitch with a 38% whiff rate. And then he's been throwing the best changeup of his career to get righties out. Now, you look at Heaney's ERA and you say, okay, that's not terrible, but it's still, 3.79. It's not the greatest in the world. Well, one thing to know is that would be the 3rd best in the Orioles rotation right now. And 2, he just had a terrible April. That's pretty much why he has those stats. His ERA was over 6 in the month of April, but since May 1st, Heaney has made 13 starts to a 3.00 ERA and just a 5% walk rate. He started throwing less fastballs and more of his good off-speed pitches in that span. And since May 1st, he has not allowed more than 3 earned runs in any outing. He's been almost a quality start machine at times. Now, the concerns with Heaney are he's always been a guy with a lot of promise and has never been able to kind of sustain a long stretch of pitching really well. He did have a slightly concerning postseason last year. He pitched in 5 games for the Rangers. They went on to win the World Series, started 3 of them and pitched twice in relief. And he had a 4.09 ERA in 11 innings. That's not anything crazy, but he never got deep into a game as a starter. And he only struck out 4 batters in 11 innings while walking 4. That is a little bit concerning. If he was the only starting pitching addition to this Orioles team right now, I think I would pencil him in as the number 3 starter in the postseason. Would maybe feel better if he were the Orioles' number 4 starter, but beggars can't be choosers with all the injuries that the O's have had. Either way, whether he's the 3, the 4 used out of the bullpen, he's the guy who would make the O's staff better. I would be still confident in using in some role in the postseason. And I just really, really like his stuff. And I think the Orioles can really help him to play up, because the last time he was really, really dominant was when he was with the Dodgers a couple of years ago, and they turned him into like this crazy dominant pitcher for a little while before he got injured. Orioles, a team similar to the Dodgers that seems to have, this player development thing going on, and maybe they can make a few tweaks that make him even better as a really good lefty to have on the mound. But those are number 4 and 3 on my list. Next up, we're getting to the top 2. The 2 guys who, if the Orioles get them, I feel like would easily slot into their top 3 to their postseason rotation, make this team a whole lot better in October. I'll tell you who those 2 guys are coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number 1 ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning cash. Well, you're burning rubber, I should say, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. And today's episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. What does that mean? Well, it means that getting tickets for Orioles games now becomes so much easier and faster. Prices on the Game Time app, they actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I've bought tickets on Game Time right outside the gates. They get sent right to my phone. I get a last-minute deal where you can save up to 60% on Game Time buying O's tickets. And it's super easy. It gets sent right to the app. You scan it, you go in, you have a great time. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB. That is LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So there's not a whole lot of these rental starting pitchers out there that would be worth going after. I named number 4 and 3 on my list with Jack Flaherty and Andrew Heaney. Now up to number 2 on my rental starting pitcher wish list for the O's for this year's trade deadline. It's a guy I talked about a little bit earlier this week, and that is Blue Jays left-hander Yusei Kikuchi. Now, the Blue Jays at this point seem like they're going to be sellers. It doesn't seem like, at least the reporting around it, they're going to do a full fire sale, but at the very least, they're rental guys. They're impending free agents. They seem to be moving towards trading them away. And I talked about earlier this week, would the Blue Jays trade with the Orioles in division? If they did, would they have some sort of AL East tax where they make a team like the O's pay a little bit more to get their players? It is possible. It's probably not the best business move if you want to just get the best return and the Orioles offer it. But Yusei Kikuchi is a guy that I am very intrigued by. And again, I talked about him a little bit earlier this week on the show, but he's made 20 starts, 106 innings. He's actually pitched the most innings out of any of these rental starters so far this year. 4.42 ERA, but a 3.68 FIP and a 3.35 xFIP tells me he's been a little unlucky. The Blue Jays defense has been a little tough behind him. He's been very good this year. And if you look at the stuff that every pitcher throws, Stuff Plus is a metric created initially by Saris that essentially says, hey, take out your location, take out your command. We're just looking at how good the physical stuff is. Yusei Kikuchi is the only guy, when you combine all of his pitches, that his Stuff Plus is over 100. And generally, 100 is about league average. Yusei Kikuchi's at 110 on the Stuff Plus. So he has some offerings that are going to get guys to swing and miss. 26% strikeout rate shows that, just a 6% walk rate. Really, really good combination. Has the second best strikeout minus walk rate on this list as well. The issue is he also gets hit the hardest out of any of these guys. He's got a 44% hard hit rate. Only Patrick Corbin gets hit harder on this list. And his 10.5% barrel rate, he gets barreled the most out of any of these 11 rental starters that I kind of have on my list in front of me. So there's some good and some bad parts. Now, it's kind of a kitchen sink approach for Kikuchi. Fastball, curveball, slider, changeup is what the left-hander throws. The changeup is the only pitch that has over a 30% swing and miss rate. 30% is kind of the marker where you're like, okay, this pitch is really, really good for strikeouts if you can get it up over 30%. But the changeup is also his number 4 pitch. He throws it the least. It's one of his weapons against right-handers, but he generally tends to throw his curveball a lot more as his number 1 weapon to righties. But the changeup's honestly better. Everything shows that the changeup is better than the curveball. So maybe the Orioles, who love a good changeup, would get him to throw that pitch a little bit more if he came to Baltimore. I mean, opponents are hitting just 189 against it. He has been using it a little bit more as the season has gone on, but that could be the little tweak to make him even better. Now, again, ball gets hit hard against him. He's a fly ball pitcher. He is prone to the home run, especially with his fastball, which, is 95, 96, but he throws it a lot. It gets hit hard sometimes. But most of those home runs he's allowed have come against right-handed hitters this year. And if you get him at Oriole Park with the big and deep new wall in left field, that is going to curb some of those homers that right-handers have been pulling against Yusei Kikuchi this year. And really, the home run ball has been his number 1 issue against his fastball and just in general. You add all those things together, I'd be fine if the Orioles traded for Yusei Kikuchi and he was their number 3 starter in their playoff rotation. It went Burns, Rodriguez, Kikuchi. I'd feel pretty good about that. Heading into the postseason, he would help them get there. He would help them in the playoffs. This is a move I would like. Now, it's not number 1 on my list. This is a move I would really like in Yusei Kikuchi. Number 1 on my list is a guy who you could get technical and say, Connor, is he really a rental? But I'm going to throw him in this list anyway. My number 1 rental starting pitcher on my wish list is Texas Rangers right-hander Nathan Eovaldi. Now, this comes with a caveat that the Rangers have to be sellers. And again, the Orioles have it all in their hands this weekend. If they can go in, and even if they win the series, it'll help. But if they could go in and sweep the Rangers in Texas, that would go a long way to this Rangers team, at the very least, looking to trade away their rental guys. Now, Eovaldi is not a straight-up rental. He does have an option on his contract for 2025. Now, it is a vesting option. What that means is generally there's something that has to happen for the option to get tacked on. It is a $20 million player option for 2025. Player option means it is Eovaldi who would choose whether or not he wants to say, yes, I want to stay here for another year for $20 million, or no, I want to become a free agent. The caveat is he has to reach 300 total innings pitched between 2023 and 2024. At this point, as we hit the All-Star break, he is 62 innings away from hitting that 300 inning benchmark. Basically 62 innings for a guy like Eovaldi, that is essentially 11 starts. If you plan out what's left in the schedule, he's got about 12 to 13 starts remaining. So it would be interesting for any team, or the Orioles, if they brought him in, if they are worried about having to promise him $20 million in 2025. Now, to me, it's a no-brainer. Eovaldi, despite all of the injury past that he's had, remember, he missed a good chunk of time last year with an elbow issue and then returned at the end of the season and was dynamite in the postseason for the Rangers. We'll get to that. But to me, Eovaldi is still a good pitcher, and $20 million a year is a going rate, is the going rate for a good starting pitcher in free agency in Major League Baseball. So I don't think it would be a problem if you were on the hook to pay Eovaldi $20 million to pitch for you in 2025. Because listen, the O's still need starters next year as well. That's the other thing. So I would certainly take Eovaldi if that's the case. There's been some talk about, would teams like rest him a little more so he didn't reach those 62 innings? Whatever it is, he would help the team now and in the future if he stuck around. Now, I mentioned the health issues he's had, but it's been a great year for Nathan Eovaldi. 2.97 ERA in 94 innings over 16 starts. He's got a 25% strikeout rate, only a 7% walk rate on the year. He's given up a few homers here and there, and his FIP is a little higher than his ERA, but the stuff is just awesome. The four-seam fastball, it might be the best of his career. He's not throwing 100 anymore, but he's throwing 96, and opponents are hitting just 185 against his fastball this year. The velocity, the spin, the induced vertical break, they're all up from the last few seasons. He also has the lowest vertical release point of his career. And you think about, you have a high spin, high velocity fastball with a lower release point. That is basically how Craig Kimbrell gets people out, despite the fact that he has lost velocity. He's got that kind of low release point, and the ball kind of spins almost upwards off his hand and seems to rise up against hitters. That is what Eovaldi has been doing this season, and has made him nasty. And when you combine it with a devastating splitter that's been his bread and butter his entire career, it's got a 37% swing and miss rate this year. It's kind of like, and this is a stretch, but it's the starting version of Felix Bautista. Fastball high, splitter low, and just go at him essentially. But you also add in a curveball that's a good number 3 pitch that has a 38% swing and miss rate. He's just been fantastic this year. I get it. I know there are injury concerns always with Eovaldi. I know there's the concern about his player option, but I am just so in on this stuff and what he can do. And am I being influenced a little bit by his postseason career? Maybe. But one thing that happened to the Orioles last year is they didn't have anybody who had pitched in the postseason before. And it kind of showed. Now, going and getting Corbin Burnes was huge, not only to be the ace all season, but a guy who's pitched in the playoffs. But even Burnes hasn't pitched as much in the postseason and had nearly the success that Eovaldi has had in October. Nathan Eovaldi in his postseason career has thrown 79 2/3 postseason innings and has a 3.05 ERA. And then you look at what he did last year in the playoffs. The Rangers do not win the World Series without him. I know Jordan Montgomery got a lot of the press, but Eovaldi, 36 2/3 innings with a 2.95 ERA in the playoffs. Honestly, if the O's went and got Eovaldi and he stayed healthy, I would put him in as the number 2 starter come playoff time. I'd go Burnes, Eovaldi, Rodriguez as my rotation. And then you got everybody else, all those other options, may have to start 1 or 2 games, come out of the bullpen. I'm feeling really, really good about that playoff rotation if you add Nathan Eovaldi. Now, there are a lot of questions as well. Okay, what would any of these guys cost? That's the other thing. What would the Orioles have to give up? Now, a rental starter is always going to be cheaper than a controllable starter, a guy who has multiple years under contract after this year. And that's why I kind of started with the rental starters here. But pitching is at a premium. And as I mentioned at the top of the episode, there are really, these 4 that you would want on your team as rentals. Maybe not that many more who you would really want. And again, if the Rangers don't end up selling, there's 2 guys. There's Kikuchi and Flaherty, and that's it. So the prices are going to be jacked up because of that. And it's going to take maybe just one top 100 style prospect and some younger filler. And it's going to take multiple players with a big time headliner to go get these guys. Now, I don't think it would cost, either or any of Holiday or Mayo or Basayo to get one of these rental starters. But you'd have to look maybe in the Chase McDermott bin. I don't know if you have to look in the Heston Kjerstad bin, but maybe the Dylan Beavers and Judd Fabian with a little more on the back end scenario, the Cade Povich bin, any of these things you'd have to seriously consider. Because also with the Rangers, they're a team that if they sell this year, they're looking to retool with guys close to the majors because they're going to try to come right back and compete for a World Series again in 2025. They're not looking for your single A prospects. They're looking for double and triple A guys who are going to be ready pretty soon. So that's something to think about as well. The Orioles are going to have to pay up to get any of these guys. There's no question about it. But if they can get somebody like Eovaldi or Kikuchi, that makes this team pretty good heading into the postseason. But let me know in the comments. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. And let me know, hey, of these rental starters, who would you put in your top 4, your top 5? Really the guys that I have on the list right now, Kikuchi, obviously, as we mentioned, Jack Flaherty, Andrew Heaney, Nathan Eovaldi. Not putting Max Scherzer on here, but the other guys, Patrick Corbin, Martin Perez, the lefty from the Pirates, Frankie Montas, maybe the righty from the Reds if they sell, Michael Lorenzen from Texas, Chris Flexen from the White Sox, Trevor Williams from the Nats, and the righty Ross Stripling from the A's. All could be dealt as rental starters at this deadline. Let me know who your top 3, top 4 would be on your wish list for the Orioles to go and get to upgrade that rotation. But one more thing to get to before we go. Orioles have made 4 more undrafted free agent signings after the draft. Get you the quick scouting report on all 4 of them to finish up the pod coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about. And yes, we're even talking about your rival cities. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more at Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival city. Now, I've talked about it, but are the Orioles and Rangers becoming rivals a little bit? I mean, what happened in the playoffs last year? Now you've got this big series coming up this weekend. You're looking to book a hotel maybe back in Texas, or maybe you were already there for All-Star Week, but you said, you know what? I'm going to stay to see the O's. Book that hotel at Booking.com. They've got everything you need, so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay, well, it can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or in the Booking.com app. And today's episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Prize Picks. For me, the most fun and exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. How do you play Prize Picks? Well, after you download the app, all you got to do is take a look at the numbers they've given you on how many points someone will score, how many hits someone will get, how many strikeouts a pitcher will get. And all you do is pick more or less on those numbers provided by Prize Picks on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Now, the WNBA is slowing up for the Olympic break, but we've got Major League Baseball starting tomorrow, again, every single night. You can look at strikeouts. Corbin Burns returning to the mound. More or less, certain amount of strikeouts, I'm always going to take the more. You can do that. You get it right, you can win some cash. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So to finish things up on today's Thursday episode, I wanted to run through a few undrafted free agent signings that the Orioles have made after the draft. Remember, the MLB draft wrapping up on Tuesday, and then after that, there are players who don't get picked in the 20-round draft, but a lot of them then sign kind of smaller, basically minor league contracts with teams to still join the organizations. And the Orioles signed one already earlier this week. It was right-handed pitcher Alex Ramos out of a high school in New York. We talked about him on yesterday's episode, but since then, they have signed 4 more guys. And the first one, 22-year-old shortstop Steven Ondinoff out of Arizona State. Right-handed hitter who played at Florida International University, a D1 school down in the Miami area for 3 years, and then transferred to Arizona State for his final college season in 2024. And he performed pretty well. Hit .291 this year with a .357 on base and a .429 slugging. Just an 11% strikeout rate to an 8% walk rate. Basically is the kind of Costco brand version of Griff O'Farrell, the Orioles' second selection in the draft. A lot of contact, not a lot of walks, not a lot of strikeouts, doesn't hit for a lot of power, but a really good defensive shortstop, originally from Puerto Rico as well, and should kind of shore up the bottom part of the Orioles system. Then after that, it was 3 more pitchers that the Orioles brought in. The first one, 23-year-old right-hander Christian Herberholtz out of Auburn. He will turn 24 in October, so he's a little bit older. Pitched for 2 years at Tennessee Tech and then a couple more at Auburn. This year, he was kind of a starting pitcher, relief pitcher hybrid. I believe it was 8 starts, 9 relief outings, but he threw 43 and a third innings, did have a 5.40 ERA, but the stuff was really good. Low 90s fastball, changeup, and slider. 25% strikeout rate to only an 8% walk rate is really good numbers in the SEC. Was kind of a fireman type reliever at times, would come in the big moments and get out of jams. He is older, but he's got some nasty stuff, and I'm interested to see him pitch. Next guy they brought in, another 23-year-old right-hander. This time it is Trent Turzensky, a righty out of Valparaiso, where he spent a lot of time pitching in the Horizon League. 5 years at Valpo. I think basically exhausted his college eligibility. Did have Tommy John surgery in 2022, missed basically all of the 2023 season with that injury, but came back for one last ride in 2024. And it was interesting. He had a 7.42 ERA in 26 and 2/3 innings out of the Valpo bullpen this year with a 22% strikeout rate and a absurdly high 15% walk rate. But here's why the Orioles went after him. It is good stuff. It is a sinker in the mid-90s that he can touch 99 with a changeup and a curveball to go with it for the right-hander. But the big thing is he has maybe the funkiest delivery of any pitcher that was available both during and after this year's draft. He's like a 6'6" right-hander who gets elite extension, and it's super funky. Joe Doyle, our draft guy back when he was at Prospects Live, had a good write-up about Turzensky a couple years ago. Has this herky-jerky motion. Everything's moving. And when he locates his sinker, it makes him super, super tough to hit because he is so funky on the mound. And the last guy they signed, 23-year-old left-hander Ryan Kabarkis, also out of FIU, so the Orioles clearly were scouting at FIU. He pitched at the University of Florida for the Gators for 2 years and then transferred to FIU for 3 seasons. He was a starter his first 2 years at FIU, but then went back into the bullpen, was basically their closer this year, had about a 5 ERA in 42 innings, but a 29% strikeout rate was great, 8% walk rate, very low. Fastball in the low 90s, he's got a curveball, he's got a changeup, really good stuff from the left-hander. But that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are back with another pod on Friday, but it's our normal morning posting pod. We're going to go through more starting pitchers available at the deadline, but this time the controllable starters. Talk about some guys that could be with the O's for a couple of years that they could trade for. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.